Hello, everyone, and welcome to our monthly webinar. My name is Justin Cooper. I'm a hard money lender, full-time real estate investor, and coach and consultant to other real estate investors. Each month, we bring in some of our friends in the industry to share their expertise. This may be through a presentation, like when we talk about self-directed IRAs or title insurance, or we may simply interview our expert friends and dive deep into how they got started, where their investing has taken them, and what they see coming both for themselves and for the industry. I want to say thank you to everyone for making it to tonight's event. We know that you're giving up some of your time, so Ziana and I will do everything we can to bring you the value that you're hoping for. This webinar is brought to you by Pine Financial Group. Pine Financial is Colorado and Minnesota's premier hard money lender. Pine focuses on the needs of Colorado and Minnesota real estate investors. We're investors ourselves, and we know what it takes to get deals closed. Everyone at Pine Financial Group is dedicated to the success of its clients. We only experience success when our clients are succeeding. So we have a habit of telling you when a deal should and should not be done. And isn't that what you want from a professional in the industry, especially someone that you trust as an advisor? You will benefit from our honesty and integrity when you choose to work with us. Now, quick little note for those in Minnesota, we have our Real Estate Investors Success Summit coming up Saturday, February 15th. So just like a week and a half away. You can learn more about the event, who's going to be there, what the itinerary is, all that good stuff at mniss.com. Again, the Real Estate Investors Success Summit in Minnesota, February 15th, and you can register at mniss.com. Tonight's webinar is a topic that's been gaining a ton of popularity over the past several years. I'm starting to learn a whole lot more about it. Today, we're talking about short-term rentals and Airbnb. And we brought in Ziana. Ziana has been an Airbnb host since 2012 and has grown her offerings to include consulting and co-hosting homes from Seattle to Spain. At 33 years old, she's an avid real estate investor, owning 6 homes and managing 25 others, all rented short-term. She teaches her clients how to create automated hosting businesses through her website and blog. Ziana's been to 47 countries, spending half the year in Boulder, Colorado, and the other half traveling the world as an international pet and house sitter. Ziana, I told everybody just a little bit about who you are. Why don't you take it from there? Tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do, and then we'll dive in and start talking more Airbnb.
Well, as of Thursday, I have 7 properties, so feeling good about that.
Nice. Congrats. Awesome.
Yeah, I was really enjoying listening your little intro about like yourself because I don't know that much about you. So I'm like, oh yeah, full-time real estate investor. Got to ask you about that. Um, yeah, so I started using Airbnb in 2012, and it was just kind of a side hustle, and it grew into my whole business. And so now I help people by managing their properties. I consult and teach people how to build their own Airbnb businesses and manage for others. And I help people with personal finance. So I kind of just do a lot of stuff. But
Awesome.
yeah, I'm actually researching a lot about buying some long-term investments. This is kind of like a new area for me, and I have bought a few properties out of state previously, and so now I'm doing a little bit of that going forward. So I've been just doing a lot of research, flying around the country. It's going to be pretty exciting coming up here.
Awesome. I love it. That's exactly what I do
Yeah.
with my coaching and consulting is helping folks who already have professional jobs and businesses and making good money, but they want to expand their portfolio and start picking up some rentals. So have to chat about that offline sometime. And
Awesome.
so for all those attending, if you guys have any questions, feel free and jump into the questions section. Uh, Ask anything you want. I'll be monitoring them, and obviously, if I can interrupt Ziana and ask away, that's what we're here to do. So I've got some questions, but obviously, we want to make sure we cover all of your questions as well. So jump on into that question section. In fact, test it out. If somebody can say that they hear us or see us, go ahead and drop into the questions that you can that were on your computer there. Maybe.
I'm wondering if I'm going to be able to see it on my end too.
There we go.
Cool.
All right, Jason, Alyssa, perfect. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. Awesome. And so, Ziana, tell us a little bit about just for those who are just super new, they maybe heard the term, but they don't really understand what it is. Let's just start with a real basic intro. What is Airbnb?
Yeah, so Airbnb is a service that helps people connect their homes and other people that are looking to rent homes. And so they primarily deal in vacation homes, but that can be something completely regular. It doesn't have to be in a ski town or a beach location. It can be just anyone's home. And so you can even rent out a room, a basement, a tent in your backyard. There's all kinds of cool ideas. People rent out, a sleeper van in their driveway. So Airbnb is a really cool way to make a little side income, and I've loved it.
Interesting. Awesome. Okay. And so how did you get into it? Walk us through your backstory. How did you find short-term rentals and how did you first dive in?
Yeah, it was kind of by accident. I don't know if you've ever heard of this website called couchsurfing.com, but
Okay.
essentially couchsurfing is where you could put up a couch or a space in your living room or even a guest room that you would host travelers for free. And I was really big on that platform in like 2006 and traveled all over Europe and hosted a lot of people in Hawaii where I was living. And so I was really used to that concept of like inviting people into my home that I didn't know. And I think a lot of people, when Airbnb started, they were like, yeah, I don't think anyone's going to be comfortable with just opening their doors to randoms. But then it's blown up to this huge thing. So now lots of people are doing it. But yeah, I got started just because a friend told me about it and it sounded like a cool win-win. I had already had all these great experiences with couch surfing, and now people want to pay me to do the same thing. I was like, yeah, let's do that. So I was just a college student, and I thought it could be a nice little side income. And so I had a roommate who had moved out, and I had a two-bedroom apartment that I was just renting. And the other bedroom was still furnished with all furniture I had. So I thought, yeah, I'll turn it on, and if the Airbnb doesn't catch, if it's not a good thing, then I'll just get a roommate. So it was really kind of like an easy situation to try out without feeling like, oh, I'm going to put up all this money and it's going to be a big risk. It was really just like, oh, it works. And then I kept going from there. So after that, I rented more apartments. I ended up buying apartments and then helping other people rent their places. So yeah, it's really moved organically, but it became my whole business. So I'm really grateful for it.
Oh, that's awesome. And so it worked out for you, but you mentioned a few things like you had the extra space, it was already furnished, and some of these other things. So what might be some of the other like pros and cons to getting into Airbnb?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the pros is that it's easy side income. And so for people that are used to renting out places, it's usually twice market rate. And so people can make a lot more money. I would say a con is, yes, having to furnish. A lot of people are not interior designers and don't really know how to do that. And so I've seen a real spectrum of places that are amazingly done and then others that are really bare bones and look like a college dorm, and that really affects your rentals. So not having that skill and also having to have the investment of putting up furniture can be a big stretch for people. And when I started, I just kind of pieced it together with a bunch of stuff from garage sales and thrift stores and whatever I had to do when I was furnishing. But yeah, over time, I've learned a lot of ways to do it kind of affordably, but make it look really stylish. So it can be done on the cheap if you're creative. Um,
Gotcha.
I, I'd say some other cons are having to work with so much turnover. So that's the nature of the business. You make a lot more money because people are only there for a couple of nights. Um, but then you've got to deal with cleaners. You've got to deal with all the coordination of getting the guest into the home and figuring out their needs. And so there is a lot of back and forth, and it can be time consuming. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of good that comes out of it, and there's also some inconveniences.
Gotcha. And so how easy is it to get set up on the platform?
Oh my gosh, it's super easy. Yeah, I think for most people, one of the things I say is like, even if you don't intend to do Airbnb much or at all, just get on the platform and list your space. They have a really cool wizard that walks you through it. I think you could have it done in like 15 minutes if you have some photos of your place on hand. And if not, maybe a little bit longer. But it's a great way to learn the platform and then you can really test it out. And what I love about Airbnb for real estate people that are really new is that it's such a great way to just kind of like try it before really buying or investing in something in a big way, because we all live somewhere. We already have furniture and sheets and towels. So you can just go away for a weekend, put your property up, and then if you don't like it, never do it again. So it gives people a lot of flexibility to try something without a big investment.
That's awesome. That's such a great point that if you just go away for the weekend, whether you're taking a vacation or traveling for work or something like that, your place is already fully furnished and stuff. And so maybe you do a little extra laundry, change the sheets before you leave, but you could put it up on the platform. And then instead of your vacation costing you money, maybe it just offsets. Maybe you have a little bit of income. Maybe you can pay for the whole trip in that short weekend, depending on what you're doing. Um,
Totally.
and, and it's such a great way to just test it out, like you were saying, see if you're really up for it, see what it's like to interact on the platform, see what it's like to, how comfortable are you and what is your place left like after somebody comes and stays in your place. So such an
Yeah.
awesome idea and way to kind of introduce yourself, even to somebody who doesn't invest in real estate or who doesn't own rentals. It's a good way to kind of test the waters of how comfortable am I interacting with tenants and, before they come in and before and after the move out and the checkout and all that other stuff. What a great way to kind of test the waters without making any huge purchases, like buying a whole other property.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. And so what are some of the points to consider before somebody jumps in? Like maybe they did that a little bit, they rented out their place a few times, they're feeling pretty comfortable, they like the income, and now they want to dive in and maybe get a property. Or even just, before they even let somebody into their own home. So what are some things to consider before they do that?
Well, I mean, if you're going to dive into a property, that's a huge undertaking, so there's a big investment if you're buying something. There are ways to rent and re-rent, which is a little less of an investment. I always recommend that people try it on their own property first, but the easiest way to get in is to help other people with their property. So if you have a family member with an underutilized lake house or some kind of cabin, you could kind of talk to them and say, hey, I'm doing this management thing. I'm getting some experience with Airbnb. Maybe I can help you make some money on your property. They don't want to deal with it. And then all of a sudden you have this income stream where you can charge them maybe 20% or something of the nightly rate and then get a lot of practice using their space. But yeah, again, it's easier to do it in your own space. Some things to consider is that you have to be available. So it is good. They have an app that you can use very easily, and so you can use it on the go. But you need to kind of consider that people expect you to be available within the hour. And so you're kind of on call, and if you want to sign yourself up for something like that or not. Another thing to consider is who's going to clean it, because you've got to prepare the space. And so a lot of people start out by cleaning themselves, and I did that for a long time, and it's a great other side income. If you want to be doing that, you can be paying yourself, $50 an hour to clean, which is not too shabby. But it does get old, and it is kind of hard, honestly. So just those sort of considerations of like, what are the logistics here? How are people going to get in and out of the home? How do I give them access? So those are probably the top three, I'd say: communication, cleaners, and then access. Are you going to meet them with the key? Are you going to set up a lockbox? Are you going to put in a keypad or something like that?
Gotcha. And so do most people meet their tenants or is it mostly hands off with lock boxes and codes?
Yeah, I think it's really hands off these days. I think people are kind of weirded out by like having to meet someone at 11 o'clock at night or something, or even just having them feel like, oh, you're at our house. I think a lot of people like the idea of just like opening up a door and feeling like, wow, this is ours, and I don't have to tiptoe around. So, yeah, I think that it's really automated now. Plus, it just makes it super easy and convenient because people can come and go as they please. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And then,
yeah.
so what about, if you're letting somebody into your home, is there any like good rules of thumb about how to secure your personal property? I mean, I've stayed in some Airbnbs and there's just locked doors, and it's really like intriguing, like, well, what's behind that door? But at the same time,
Yeah.
I respect that it's somebody's home and they probably have some, personal stuff in there. And so, is there like any rules of thumb when it comes to that type of stuff?
Yeah, I think it depends on your comfort level. A lot of people have an owner's closet. Sometimes they want to keep some of the extra toiletries and things behind the doors, sometimes extra towels. Sometimes it's breakables or just possessions that are expensive or special. Sometimes people take down their family photos, But I've been in the whole range. Some people don't care. I never really cared, so I never had a locked door or anything. If someone goes through my underwear drawer, well, so be it. So I definitely think there's probably some weird things happening when I'm not around, but for the most part, people are paying me for it, so I don't care too much. So yeah, I think it just depends on your comfort level, but it's important to put away stuff that you feel really attached to because sometimes things break. It
Gotcha.
happens. Yeah.
And then, so what about going back to being accessible? So if I wanted to, take a vacation and then make some income and rent the place out, I got to make sure that just because I'm on vacation, I'm not fully on vacation because I still have to be accessible in case something does break or they forget a key or there's a leak or something like that. I mean, I still got to make sure I'm available, right? So is
Yeah.
it pretty easy through the app and I just need to have my phone ready, or is it more intensive? What have you found when you're renting out your place?
Yeah, I feel like the app makes it super easy. You could just get notifications on your phone. I travel with Google Fi, so that's my phone provider, and literally anywhere that I've landed in the world, I'll have data right away, and so I can do everything. But it is really sweet to be sitting on the beach, and then like $1,000 reservation comes in, you're just like, okay. Because some people book instantly and they don't really ask you too much, and then other people want to know every little thing. So yeah, it can be still very flexible and awesome. Yeah.
O- Okay, and so how much flexibility do you have in choosing? Do you have to accept everyone, or can you be picky and not choose everyone that wants to rent your place?
Yeah, so you can be picky. It really depends. People have a lot more rights on Airbnb than you do long term because you can ask people about their age, you can ask about their kids, you can ask about their pets. And as a long term renter, there's way more rules about discrimination that you can't really ask about, age and children and things like that. You have to really kind of allow everyone to stay. And I think that that's great as well. But with Airbnb, you can really kind of, I think, sort it out based on what your property is good for. Because some places are really not that safe for children, and it's good to be able to say that. The only thing that's kind of weird is service animals. You really can't choose if someone's bringing an animal, and pretty much all animals are service animals these days. So that's kind of a weird loophole. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so for you and the places you manage and stuff, do you have a team that helps you and supports you? And I'm wondering how important that might be for somebody, just getting started, like having some cleaners or knowing a good plumber or HVAC person, or handyman, just in case something goes wrong while maybe they are off on vacation.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you can do it really bare bones. These days, you can put into Google any city name and then vacation rental cleaners and pretty much find a company that does it. So, yeah, you can do that. You can also find cheaper people generally on Craigslist or something like that. But generally, all you need is like one cleaning company or a random cleaner or two, and then maybe just one handyman that you can call in an emergency. But you can even find those on Google. But it's really easy. You don't need a huge team. I manage so many rentals now that I do have like 24-hour receptionists. It's kind of a service that I pay for so that we are getting back to guests even if we're sleeping, which is really nice. But yeah, most of my areas, I just have one handyman and a cleaning company. So it can be really easy.
So excuse me. I've been fighting a cold, so if you see me coughing and don't hear me, I'm trying to catch the mute button before I cough. But so Alyssa jumps in and she's got a question here. She's got a 5 bedroom, three bathroom, 3 level house in the suburbs.
Mhm.
And she's thinking that she can have consistent Airbnb renters with this larger party, but she's worried about party groups. So can you tell us a little bit about that, and maybe how to filter out for parties, or what the risks or pros and cons might be on that?
Yeah, so there are a few things. I would not allow a single night rental. So we generally, for those bigger homes, do a minimum of 2 nights, sometimes three. That'll kind of minimize parties. We also sometimes screen for guests that are under 25, and so that kind of helps as well. There is this really cool company that came out with a device that you can put in your home. They're called Noise Aware, and they'll actually send you a text if it raises above a certain decibel in your house. So if the noise gets too loud, and then you can send them a warning. And then if they don't correct it, then you could charge them their security deposit. So I actually know some people that make a lot of money on the side by doing that. It just depends on how you want to do it. But I actually don't have too many issues with parties. The last thing I would say is that if you make a room very kid friendly, like you put some bunk beds, you put like some stuffed animals, it kind of attracts more families and less bachelors. So there are ways to kind of deter parties.
Interesting. I popped a cough drop in case anybody noticed. So if you see me playing around with stuff, that's a cough drop trying to keep me from coughing.
Uh,
That's an interesting point though about how you stage the units or the rooms, and then but how would somebody see that? It's obviously all in the marketing and the pictures that you're putting up online, right?
yeah.
And so, okay, so it's a lot of how you stage it, not necessarily stage in the home, but how you stage the offering on the platform, right? So the pictures you're putting up there to then
Yeah.
attract the right people.
Yeah, and adults will sleep in bunk beds and everything, it's kind of like it still works if you want to rent it to a lot of people, but it is nice to have kind of like that family forward look, and it attracts more families and big groups in that way, which are great. Yeah.
Interesting. And is there like price points if it's more kid friendly or if it's kid friendly and then maybe less party friendly, or does the pricing change?
Not necessarily, but you can charge per person. So generally, I don't charge per bedroom. So like say there's 5 bedrooms, I wouldn't charge for the first 5 guests, but anything beyond that where you could sleep 10 or even 12 if you have a sleeper sofa. So yeah, I would charge 6 guests and over. And then you can charge, $10 per person per night or something like that. And it can really add up, which is great because sometimes you'll have only 5 guests and it'll be just like more of a wealthier family. And then sometimes you'll have like 15 people all piled in, but then you're making a ton of money. So maybe it's like, $600 a night or something, which really makes it worth it. So,
Interesting, interesting. So
yeah.
there's like the base per night, and then there's maybe an add-on depending on how many
Mhm.
people. So is that just all on the honor system, or is there a way to actually double check if more people show up?
Yeah, so it depends on how you set it up. I generally have them all in an honor system. There are a few houses that we have that have like a Nest doorbell or some kind of doorbell cam, and you can count the people there. You can't have cameras in the home, but you can have them right outside. And so then, yeah, you can, I don't know what, charge them or make sure that they're not having people beyond that. But I really haven't had an issue with it.
Gotcha. So that's something interesting. Cameras, and you said you're not allowed to have them in the home. Is that because I've heard that there's been issues. Obviously, cameras in certain rooms is worse than other cameras, but is that like
Yeah.
a rule of the platform? Like you're not allowed to have any cameras in the house?
I actually don't know. I just have read all these like articles about people freaking out, like how to find out if your Airbnb has a camera and all this stuff. So I guess it's not explicitly against it, but it feels creepy. Like I don't know. I wouldn't do it, but I could see the value of having one outside of the home. And I
Gotcha.
I know that one of our houses we caught like somebody smoking because they were like smoking a cigarette on the doorstep and then walked into the house smoking. And so you're able to kind of stop some of that or charge people their security deposit. So it
Hmm.
is good.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
And so how would somebody, let's say I'm comfortable with the platform or I'm just diving right in and I want to buy a property solely for Airbnb and short-term rentals, what might be something that I would consider like location-wise when I'm looking for it?
Yeah, so a lot of people think automatically like, oh, it has to be a vacation place. So, Hawaii or Florida or a ski town. But in general, a lot of those are expensive because they've already been vacation rental cities for a long time. And sometimes the laws are not that friendly. So some of the more off the beaten path places have become more and more popular and just a little more affordable. So you have a really good profit margin. But some of the things that I tell people about that they wouldn't normally think about is college towns. I think college towns attract a lot. So people are coming to schools to check them out, parents visiting students, and there's a lot of events usually around a college. So, you might have professors coming in or different things going on. So that ends up being a big draw. Another thing is like convention centers. So like downtown areas usually have convention centers, they have ball fields, sports complexes. So there's a lot going on in those sorts of areas. And a convention center can be more year round, which is great because most of vacation rentals can be really seasonal. Another thing is hospitals. A lot of people are coming from out of town for certain treatments, and then you can also get nurses and doctors that are coming in for 3 months or 6 months. There are a lot of people that are traveling around the country doing that. And they can be really great tenants because they stay for a little bit longer and maybe they don't pay as much as a nightly rate, but they are barely there. And they make the money so you don't have to chase them for rent. So yeah, there's quite a few things that can be creative, and most cities, like lots that you don't even think about, all have these things. And so you can definitely invest in cities like St. Louis, where I've invested in, and it's much cheaper than Colorado. So yeah.
Gotcha. And so if like in Denver, right? We're both in Colorado, and so in
Yeah.
Denver, there's all of those things
Hmm.
available and optional. So Denver sounds like a great place to invest. But is there like a radius around some of these things that we would want to be finding the properties? Is there like a radius or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, if it's going to be like a ball field or something like that, I'd say walking distance. Like convention centers, a lot of times people are like, I don't want to rent a car. Can I just walk to it? Because I'm going to be at this place like 9 to 5 for 3 days. So I would think those you'd have to be kind of close, maybe within 15 minutes of walking. If you're at a college, probably up to 20 minutes of driving, maybe a little bit less, maybe 15 minutes of driving. Um, a hospital, I would say you'd probably want to be pretty close to a hospital, maybe 10 or 15 minutes by a drive, because people might be, going at odd hours of the day, and it might be easier for them if they're really close. But yeah, I mean, I think I know at least in Denver, because I have a lot of data here, I'd say that people can be in some obscure neighborhoods that are quite far from downtown, and it's not really clear what people are coming in town for, and it can still be very busy. So in the height of the season, like summertime in Denver is very popular, yeah, you can get lucky, and you're just not going to make as much per night, and it won't be as consistent as if you're in closer.
Gotcha.
There is a website called airdna.co, and that's a great one for people to look at how their property might perform. So they have a free thing where you can type in your address and how many bedrooms and bathrooms, and it'll tell you what your property will make.
Gotcha.
So
Jason has a question that seems relevant. He says, I live right next to a hospital with a large 4-bedroom home. How do I determine what prices to charge?
yeah, that's interesting. A 4-bedroom home by a hospital might be something that you would want to rent by bedroom. And so that's something he could check out. But also on Facebook, they have like traveling nurse kind of groups, and you can rent per room that way. That's what I would do instead of
Hmm.
Airbnb. But you could rent the full 4-bedroom house if you wanted to. It just depends if you're wanting to live there. If you wanted to check the price point, you could check on AirDNA and get an idea, but I would also just put in your actual address on Airbnb as in the search, and you can see what everybody around you is charging. And that's just for now, because rates change based on seasonality. But yeah, that's a good way to do it. And then the last thing I would say is that there are a few websites that do pricing for Airbnbs, and if you go on my website, I have a couple of options there. And if you use my link, they'll give you like a free month. So Beyond Pricing is one that I use personally, and I like that a lot. So it's kind of a way to just test it out, and it sort of tells you without you having to know, which is helpful.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And so along those lines of like the executive rentals, like for the nurses, the doctors, the traveling professors, um, I guess it's still a short-term rental because we're talking less than a year.
Yeah.
But is that it does but when we're still talking 3 months and 6 months, is that something that is still supported through like the Airbnb platform, or are there some other short-term rental platforms that might be a better fit if that's like the demographic and tenants we're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, you can put it on Craigslist for sure, but it's not as easy as like the Facebook groups, I think is really good. And then Airbnb does have that. So I'll occasionally get longer term people through Airbnb. And it's generally when we're like in our slower season and the rates go down pretty low, because then that determines how much the long-term rate is as well. But yeah, Airbnb, you could get people for a year. So it is great. Yeah, you can figure it out.
Interesting. And so are there, so along the pricing line here, are there different ways to, be able to get more per night? Um, is there any like the better staging, or is it all just kind of seasonality and location? What kind of determines that?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that using pricing software is really important if you want to make more per night because the pricing software is looking at what hotels are charging, what other Airbnbs are charging, seasonality, demand. So that like really affected my business. I think I was up like 40% after I started using pricing software. So I'd say that's a great place. Um, to go per night, I would say also, so there's like an SEO thing that happens with Airbnb. It's based on clicks and people that put you in their like favorites. And so pictures are the first thing that people really see. So really spending the money to have some professional photos makes a huge difference. I definitely recommend that. And then yeah, it's the furnishing. You're really selling the place through photos because people don't generally come see a home and walk through it like a normal tenant would. So yeah, you really want to get it staged. So if you're not very good at putting together furniture or making a place look nice, like pay a friend or take them to lunch or something like that that's really good at that sort of thing. And it really makes a difference.
Gotcha. So Jason chimed back in saying that he's been having some luck with Roomster. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't used Roomster.
Okay. Well, there you go. Maybe a new one for everybody to check out. Um, so Lori asks about property insurance.
Yeah. Okay, so with Airbnb and VRBO, which is also Home Away, they like are merged together. They offer $1 million in coverage. So it's nice that you have like that extension of liability and damage coverage on top of a security deposit that you should be taking. So you have that, but then now there's a lot of companies that are recognizing that Airbnb is a big thing. And so you can get commercial insurance or short-term rental insurance on your property rather than having just a regular landlord insurance policy. And so they don't cost much more. And there are companies like American Modern, I really like, Proper Insurance. And then a lot of the companies, if you live in the home part-time, they'll let you just do a rider. And so like Progressive has a rider, Travelers has a rider. So you just probably, I would say, call the company you're currently with and play dumb. Just say, oh, I was thinking about this Airbnb thing. If you're already doing it, don't out yourself. Um, and then find out if they have some option for you. And if they don't, then start calling around. But I do think it's important to have. I've never had a problem where my insurance tried to deny me, but people do say that that can happen because they're always looking for some reason to deny you. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then, so what about staging your house? Are there companies that will help you do that?
There are a few companies. I still haven't heard a ton about it, but there are companies as well that just help you furnish for cheap. So I have seen online, I don't really know any off the top of my head, but if you do a little research, I bet you could find it where you can take pictures and measurements of your room, and then they'll send you like a link, a bunch of links of stuff that you can buy, and they can like put it in. They do kind of like a CAD or some kind of online demo that shows what all the furniture would look like in the room. And then if you like it, you can just buy it and then it comes to your house and then you pay them just like a nominal fee because they're making a little bit of kickback on each of the furniture purchases. So there are cool things like that. And then, yeah, if you pay an actual designer, it can get pretty expensive where it's like maybe you would only maybe need like $8,000 to do like a 3 bedroom of new furniture, but if you do it with someone professional, it could be like 25,000. So
Hmm.
be careful. It gets expensive quick.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, along with that, you got to make sure you have the right photographer coming and taking the pictures so that
Yeah.
it all kind of comes together, right? And you're maximizing that value. If you're putting all that money into staging and furnishing, you got to make sure you're maximizing that value.
Yeah, so Airbnb has a great thing where they offer photography. They used to do it for free, but now it's just discounted. And so a lot of times you can get it for under $100 or somewhere right around there. And that's great because if you get really good like edited photos, it can be like 350 or something. So if you can have a discount, that helps people get started. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then, so going back to the pricing software, you said on your website people can find some different things, or like
Yeah,
a
I
lot of
have a
different
tools
resources.
section. Yeah, like resources, and there's a bunch of recommendations there. But yeah.
Awesome. And then, so what are some different ways to get into Airbnb? I think we kind of talked about it. You had mentioned like you lease from somebody and then you lease out to somebody else. So like, what are some different ways? Obviously, we talked about renting your own home. So what are some other
Yeah.
ways that folks can get in and get into the Airbnb game?
Yeah, so I would say there are four ways. The first one, the most easy, obvious one, is just renting what you already live in. So if you're going away, or if you kind of want to like play a game where you just put it up and see if somebody books and then go camping that weekend or whatever, people do that a lot. So that's a great way to start because there's really almost no investment in that. The next easy way to go is what we were talking about before of co-hosting, which is kind of finding a family member or a friend or word of mouth that you're going to take someone's property that's already furnished, already ready to go, and then you're going to help them manage that. And so it doesn't cost you anything, and then you just make a percentage of what they're making. So it is a really great entryway to create a new stream of income for yourself. The third way would be master leasing, is what we call it. So it's where you rent a property with the intention of renting it out on Airbnb. And so a lot of people have figured out ways to give a lot of cool points on why a landlord would want you to use their property for Airbnb. You kind of like sweeten the deal for them. And then you get their approval, and then you can rent out the place. The only thing is that now you have to furnish it, and then you're on the hook for rent if you don't make good money that month or you didn't do your numbers very well. So there's a little bit of risk there, but in the end, if you don't love the location, you could just pack up a U-Haul and go to the next place. So it does give you a little more flexibility than if you're owning. And I would say the fourth way is to own. You do make a pretty good return in general if you're the one who's owning it, and then you have equity gains and all kinds of other perks. But yeah, it's a lot more expensive to get in. So if maybe co-hosting is $0 and master leasing, maybe it's $10,000 with furniture and your first month's rent, I would say buying a home might be $50,000 because you've got to have closing costs and down payment, and it could be even more than that. So just kind of getting an idea of what things cost and what the risks are there. Because once you own a place, if the location's not as good as you thought, what are your exit strategies? So it's always good to have a plan B.
Gotcha. And um, so when you're helping, I think it was option two, right? When you're helping someone with their property,
Mhm.
so who manages the Airbnb page?
Yeah, so that would be you. I mean, I think people can work out all kinds of different deals of what they do and don't do, and then what they make as a percentage based on how much they're doing. My company, we offer like a full hands-off experience. So we create a listing and we do all the guest communication, and we're scheduling and training cleaners and ordering supplies and all of that. So we kind of do it all, but I think it can be a whole range of how much you want to help people and how much you're trying to make.
Gotcha. And then so along the lines of these master leases, so what are some things that we need to think about and talk about? So I own a property that's purely for long-term rentals. You obviously are the Airbnb expert and you want to come lease my property long term, but then turn around and sublease it essentially, right? Um, to Airbnb guests. And so what would be some of the things that you and I would negotiate as you're trying to sign a lease on my property?
Yeah, so I usually recommend that someone drafts up like a cover letter. If you're going to like go on Craigslist and then shoot out maybe 20 of them or 50 of them and see who bites, it's good to have all of your talking points or your terms up front, so that people know right away. Because if you just say, "Hi, I want to rent your place on Airbnb," you're going to get a lot of no's. But if you can have like a few points, it might be a little more attractive. And so some of those points, I recommend that people try to do a longer lease. So a lot of long-term landlords, they worry about vacancy and getting their rent. So if you can say, hey, I'll rent it for 3 years, I'll rent it for 5 years or something like that, then you're really guaranteeing that they're going to get that rent and they're excited about that. And then if it doesn't really work out, you could probably still get out of your lease by finding another tenant to take over your lease. So you're not necessarily stuck, but it makes them feel really assured. Another thing that I say is like, oh, we're going to guarantee your rent whether or not we're making any money, and we'll put automatic rent increases. So you can kind of look up in your city and say like, oh, the average in our city is 2% or 4% rent increases, and then just do that automatically. So they don't even have to think about it. They know that they're making guaranteed rent, and then year after year, it's going to be a little bit more, which makes them feel good about that. You can also say, you know, we'll cover all of the maintenance under $200. So they know you're not going to call them for every light bulb and, you know, a plugged toilet or the disposal or something like that. And then you're a little bit on the hook, but in general, things don't happen too much, but it makes them feel really good about it. And then you're more in control of the property. You don't have to call someone every second. So things like that, there's quite a few terms that you could put into it, but I think those are a few good places to start.
Gotcha. Interesting. And so how does that help or hurt? Or I know locally in Denver specifically, there's some rules around um, who and what you can Airbnb. Like specifically in Denver, you can only rent out your primary residence. And so one, how does maybe this master lease play in, or maybe it doesn't to that? And then two, how can somebody go out and find if they're not in Denver, if rules like that are in their area?
Yeah, so to look up rules, I always just say like city short-term rental laws in Google and it'll pop up. Or you can go to your city's website. Every city has their own little website, and then it'll usually say under licenses, business licenses, there'll be something in there. And so a lot of places don't have short-term rental laws, and that can be a little confusing. But for places that do, it's really based on city or county rules. And so for like the city of Denver, they want it to be your primary residence. Wow, sorry about that. I have a ghost. Um, they want it to be your primary residence. But the cool thing about that is that it can also be you as a renter, your primary residence. So, like in Boulder, where I live, you have to be the owner, and that's the only way that you can get a license. But in Denver, you can live there part of the year. And I don't know if they stipulate how many days a year that you're actually living there, but as the renter, you can still get a license, which is kind of great. So then you have a lot more flexibility and don't have to be the owner. And then what's also cool is that like in Boulder, since it's so strict, it makes it so that there's not a lot of B&Bs. But if you go right outside of the city limits, so for example, right out of our downtown, we have like a canyon that goes up the mountain. You can be just like 5 minutes from downtown, just over the city line, and you can do whatever the heck you want. So you can be a little crafty about it. For Denver, unincorporated Adams County, a lot of people are doing Airbnb there with no regulations. So sometimes you just have to do a little bit of research.
Gotcha. Interesting. And then so how does somebody analyze the numbers to see if it's going to be a good deal or not? Because obviously if I'm
Yeah.
just renting out my own home, that's one thing, right? It's, the weekend I'm gone or the week on vacation or something like that. But if I'm trying to make an actual investment in this thing, what am I really looking for, and how am I crunching numbers on these things?
Yeah, so a good place to start is that AirDNA company that I was talking about. So they do sell analytics portfolios that are super detailed, but you can also just get the basics of the free plan. And so they'll tell you what they think you'll make in a year, what your average nightly rate is, and then what your occupancy should be on average. And so you can kind of play with numbers a little bit there, getting an idea. And I always make my numbers more conservative, and kind of do like, what's the worst case scenario? Will I still make money? Otherwise, I won't do it. I think what a lot of people don't remember or think about is that they have to pay all of the utilities. So that can really change. And if you're going to master lease, it's a good idea to look more at condos than single family homes. Now, the condos might have rules against it, so you need to make sure that they don't, but a condo has way less utilities. So generally, you're just paying electricity, maybe gas, and then Wi-Fi. If you're at a home, you might have like sewer, water, trash, like it just goes on forever. Um, and so that can really eat into your budget. So it is a good idea to either ask the landlord or find out through the utility companies what the averages were there. Because if you're spending an extra $300 to $500 a month, that can really eat into your profit.
Right, absolutely. And so AirDNA, does that have like a spot to add in those utilities and also like the cleaning fees and all those things? Is that all part of like the spreadsheet and analysis that they have?
Nope. Um, you have to do that on your own, but you can make a pretty basic spreadsheet. If somebody wants to email me, I have spreadsheets I can share with people, so you can email me through my website. But yeah, I think you want to consider how many days, you want to consider the seasonality. So what's like the worst, the lowest it can rent for, and then the highs are, just bonus. And then also considering either snow removal or lawn maintenance, depending on if you're going to have those things, because that can also cost money. The last thing you mentioned was cleaning. In general, I don't budget for cleaning. So the way that cleaning works is you have a nightly rate, and so maybe your nightly rate is $100 a night, but your cleaning fee is $50. If they stay one night, if they stay 100 nights, it's only $50, and the guest is paying that cleaning fee every time. So the way that I do it with my cleaners is that it doesn't matter how long the guest stayed, it's always the same price, and they know it's going to be an average for them. Sometimes a guest stays one night and it's super clean, and then another time they like trash the place and they just have to kind of deal with the average. So yeah, I don't really budget for that. I really look at the nightly rates.
And so I think you said the guest pays for that, the 50
Mhm.
bucks.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's like not out of the $100 a night fee, it's in addition to.
Yeah, it's per reservation.
Okay, interesting. Got it.
Hmm.
Very good. And so you had mentioned that you have bought out of state, and so tell us a little bit about that. Buying out of state, what are you looking for? Where did you go? How did you choose it? Lots of questions in my head, but I want to just kind of
Yeah.
throw it out there very generic and let you just kind of run with it for a second.
Yeah, so Boulder's a college town, and I kind of thought, okay, I'm gonna look at a college because that's kind of what I know, and I know that it draws enough. When I was first looking out of state, I was looking in St. Louis, and that was just by accident. So a few years into me doing Airbnb, I want to say it was about 3 years into it, I got invited to a wedding of a friend that had been living in St. Louis for like 5 years, and I thought, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go check this place out. And when I'm at the wedding, people are just doing their small talk, and people are hearing, oh, yeah, I do Airbnb. And they tell me, oh, yeah, our friends are doing it and it's really great for them. And we're thinking about doing it. Somewhere along the lines, people tell me that their mortgage is only $300 a month. And I'm like, okay. I'm coming from Boulder where I had been master leasing a place for like $1,100 for a 1 bedroom. And now I could get a 3 bedroom home for $300 a month. And so I kind of did a little quick math in my head and was like, man, even if it's just 3 nights a month, like I'm going to cover that. So I should do it. So that was kind of how I got started there. It was just really accidentally being in the right place at the right time. And then, yeah, talking to people and gathering a lot of research and then taking a risk. So it is really well worked out for me, but it's definitely risky.
So you said doing a lot of research. So
Yeah.
expand on that a little bit. What does that mean? What did you do?
Yeah. So when I left the wedding, I decided like on the spot, it was like, I'm buying a place here. And so I went home and I thought about it for 2 weeks. And then I was like, okay, am I really going to do this? And then I spent the next 2 weeks like doing all the research and then buying the place. And so I was back a month later furnishing. But the research that I was doing was all online because I didn't really get much of a chance to go through St. Louis. I was just there for the wedding, and then we were out at a state park, so I didn't really get a tour around the city or anything. Basically, I found a realtor on Bigger Pockets, and I had him go video places for me. And he was an investor himself, so he could tell me, oh, this place smells like mold or this or that. And then he had all the contacts, so we got inspections, and he had all the different people that were really helpful. I also spoke to some people that were doing Airbnb already, so friends of friends from the wedding, and they said, oh, these are the reasons why people are coming to town, these are the areas of town I think would be good for it, this is why. And they were very friendly and open about it. And so I kind of zeroed in on certain neighborhoods and read online, like, this is what these neighborhoods are about, or these are the draws to that neighborhood. And then I was just checking on Redfin and looking at different listings. Um, you can also do Street View and like walk down the street with Google. And so I did a lot of that where I'm like, oh, there's some boarded up houses here, or these cars look really scary, or, whatever. Or barbed wire fences. This is probably not a good street. And then some other things. Trulia has crime maps, and so that was really helpful. They kind of like grade different streets by color, which is great. So I was kind of going to the areas that were safest, which was really helpful. And then what else? Did I look at anything else? Yeah, so at that point, I think I was feeling really educated, like, wow, I know this place inside and out. But I did it all from afar, and I think I just got really lucky.
Awesome. Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I mean, there's always like a little bit of luck to it, but what I love is that you didn't just completely trust somebody that you found on biggerpockets.com. You then went out and kind of verified it, right? Through walking down
yeah,
the street on Google, looking at the crime maps and stuff, because um, you didn't necessarily know that person that you met online either. So a lot of
totally.
trusting, but then you went out and through many different resources, kind of double checked it all. So I think that's awesome. Kind of start with the one
Mhm.
thing, right? Who you're hoping is a trusted resource, and then went out and kind of spot checked and verified everything else made sense. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I think I've kind of run out of my big topics that I wanted to hit on. And
Yeah.
we've had some great interaction from folks on the webinar. We've got just a few minutes left in the hour, and Ziana, I want to respect your time. So if there's anybody else listening who has any other questions, now is definitely the time to start jumping in as we're going to start wrapping up. But Ziana, what did I not ask you that you want to make sure we talk about?
Well, that's interesting. I don't know if I really have something specific. I just like want to encourage people to try it out. I think like one thing I'd like to tell people is that there's nothing really special or different about my situation that made me successful in this. Like I think that everything that I have, anyone else could have, and they could do this as well. So really it was just about giving myself permission and then doing a little research and trying it. So I really like want to tell people like get out there and try it. And if you are creative and do a little research yourself, like you can have 7 properties and build your own little Airbnb empire.
I love it. So let's jump back in.
Mhm.
Where do you find your remote employees?
Yeah, so well, I only really have one girl that's working for me that's like 10 hours a week, and she does the bulk of my stuff. There's a lot of it's automated, so I don't really need that much help. So in general, if you're someone's just starting out, I would say you probably don't need anyone else except for maybe a cleaner or a handyman until you have more than like 5 properties, and then maybe you're like, oh, it's a lot of communication, or I need some software. But in
And you,
general, like
and
I
you found
said,
those guys on like the cleaner and the handyman. You found those on Google and like
yep.
it's just looking up Airbnb cleaners, like you said, and some of the things like that.
Totally. And handymen, sometimes you can find in newspapers still, like people put ads in newspapers. I know, who knew? But yeah, Google's really good. There's TaskRabbit that people use. I haven't used it, but people use it for helping assemble furniture and little odd jobs. So that can be helpful. And then Angie's List is can be good just for getting like reputable people that do specific jobs, maybe like plumbers or painters and stuff like that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Hmm.
Another question from Travis. Do you utilize tax services and or legal advisors on an ongoing basis, an ad hoc basis at all?
Yeah, so it's funny. I just got off the phone with Rocket Lawyer and I love them. And so I was trying to like build more of a partnership with them. But yeah, I think there are a lot of ways to get legal services that are cheaper. I don't know if people have used them before, but you can buy specific documents or you can have like a membership and then have access to asking a lawyer. I think you can get like half an hour a month or something for advice, and then you can do customized documents or you can just do standards. And there are a lot of standard documents that are just by the state. And so it can be really easy. They make it like where you just fill in the blanks. So you don't really have to know what you're doing so much. And then for taxes, I actually just do them myself. I do TurboTax, and it's the same kind of thing where it's like dummy proof, fill in the blank. This is what this blank means. But yeah, I mean, you can be more sophisticated than me. It's just if you have LLCs, your taxes end up being a lot more expensive to have someone else prepare. So just kind of have that in mind. And then more complications, more properties. Sometimes it's just easier to do yourself. So yeah.
Gotcha. And so does the revenue per month vary greatly depending on the property?
I think it's more the season, but yeah, it can be the property too. It really can vary. So like for example, I have like a one bedroom condo in Boulder, and I would say on the slower months it would do maybe like 1700 or 1800, and then in the like peak of summer it can do like 4000. And so that is a big variance, but it's also long term, it would only be like 1200 a month, 1300 a month. So you're still getting quite a bit more. So,
Hmm.
yeah, just to give them an example.
Gotcha. Yeah. So even in the slower months, you're making more money, as
Hmm.
opposed to a long-term rental. And then, of course, in
Yeah.
the good months, it's just blowing it out of the water.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
gangbusters.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, I don't see any other questions, and our hour is about up. So, Ziana, leave us with what's the best way we can find you? You mentioned your website a few times, so how can people connect with you, follow up with you, and stay in touch?
Yeah, it's ziannamcintyre.com. And I have a blog on there and a bunch of resources and podcasts I've been on. So there's a lot there.
Awesome. Very good.
Thank you.
Any last thoughts before we wrap up? Any last questions from anybody? I don't see any. All right.
Okay, awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for coming and joining us and hanging out. Ziana, really appreciate you joining us tonight and sharing all this great information. I learned a lot. I think our attendees learned a lot and just really appreciate it. So, of course, if
Thanks.
anybody needs any hard money for their real estate investing, whether they're going to be trying to tackle Airbnb, long-term rentals, or fix and flips, Pine Financial would love to help you out with that. If you're looking at diving into just picking up some rentals and you need some help, I coach and consult with folks all day long on that. So love to chat with you there as well. So Ziona, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. And thank you everyone for attending. We'll see you next month.
Bye. I love that it says Justina on your organizer. Are you Justin A. Thompson? Is that what that is? Or are they just fucking with you?
No, that is that's someone in our office. He set it up.
Mm, that's pretty funny.